Hello there, and welcome to another AquaMorph production tutorial. I'm Christian, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a basic training in Sony Vegas. So, Sony Vegas has a lot of different levels to it and different prices. Right now they have their HD version, Platinum, Pro, and then they have a bunch of different levels in between. But Sony Vegas and how it works is basically the same. So, I'm going to give a demonstration. I'm going to be using Sony Vegas Pro 9, but all the things I'm going to be showing will work basically the same way in all versions of Sony Vegas. So let's get started with that. The first thing I'm going to be explaining is the layout in Sony Vegas. So over here is the video box where it shows you a preview of what you're editing and all things related to the video. This is your master sound area, which controls all of the volume of any sound thing in your editing area. Over here is a bunch of different tabs. You got your project media, which any media you use will be in there. You got your Explorer, which you can search for files there and drag them onto the timeline. You got transitions, which are transitions between videos. Pretty self-explanatory. You got video effects, which are all of the effects for video. And then you got your media generators, which are different things Sony Vegas can create into your project. And down here is your timeline. And that's where you do all your editing in. The next thing I'm going to be explaining is project settings inside of Sony Vegas. So video has a lot of different settings. It looks different. It has different resolutions, aspect ratios, frame rate, depending on what type of camera you use to record or what you want your project to be like. So getting the project settings is important. So if you click the little gray icon here, it opens up your project properties window, which you can use to edit your video settings. So you want to select the aspect ratio you're using and video resolution. So if whatever you're recording was in 1920 by 1080, you'd select this one, and then you'd find something matching up the resolution of your video. And then you want to find what frame rate it's in. And say it was like in 30 frames per second, you do 29.970 frames per second, and that's what you'd select. So you want to find whatever best matches up with what you're using. When you import media into it, the video should not have black bars on either side of it. If there's black on either side of the video area right here, then something's wrong with your settings. Unless, of course, you want the black bars, but typically you don't want that. So this is fine for this tutorial right now. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to be going over is importing media inside of Sony Vegas. And there's a lot of different ways to do this, so I'm going to go over a few different ways of doing this, and you can decide on which one you prefer. So the first way is the easiest one to remember. You just go File, Import, and Media. And it will open up a window, and you can select which media you want to use. So say I want to use Apple R&D Final. You can select multiple ones by holding down Control. I'm just going to use Apple R&D Final, and you hit Open, and inside your Project Media tab, it will have the file there. Now the second way is inside of Windows, right there. You can just grab the video you want to use, or picture or audio file, doesn't really matter what it is, and just drag it into the Project Media tab, and it does basically the same thing. It's just two different ways of doing it. You could also have dragged that inside the timeline, and it would have been ready to edit inside the timeline, and it would have added it to the Project Media tab. And a third way is to use this Explorer tab, search through for the file you want, drag it onto the timeline, and it'll add it to Project Media. So the Explorer tab is just like the Explorer window inside of Windows. And that's how you import media onto Sony Vegas. Alright, so the next thing is basic editing. And all the editing is done inside the timeline. Any project media you have, anything you want to drag onto the timeline, that's what you're editing. So let's just drag on Apple R&D Final as an example. And you'll notice that there's two layers being used. There's the video layer right here, which has all the video for the clip I just dragged on, and then there's audio. And that has the audio for the clip, and it's split in two layers because audio and video are different, obviously. And so a couple of things about editing that you need to know. Right here tells you where you are in the video. You can drag it across, or you can just click. Over here is your basic palette for going through and editing through the timeline. This will, when you hit play right here, it will start playing the video from wherever this black bar is. You can hit space and it does the same thing. Over here, when you click this, will start the video from the very beginning. So you can watch the video from the very beginning. This is if you want to pause it while it's playing, or just stop it and it'll go back. Pause it will pause, like when you're playing here. When you're playing and you hit pause, it will move the black bar, and if you hit stop while it's playing, the black bar will go back to where it is. And that's just how you go throughout your video in editing. Alright, so the black bar is very important when you drag it across. If you select an area and say you want to divide it into 2 tracks, you can select it and press S, and that will split it into 2 tracks you can now drag across and do editing with. And that's how you do. That's the most important thing when editing, is knowing how to split tracks and move them around so you can shuffle the order. Now, another thing to know that's very convenient is you can adjust how long each thing is by dragging it across like this. And if you cut something and you're like, oh, that was a little too close, you can just drag it like this and it'll give it more time. It doesn't stretch out the video, like it doesn't make it go slower. It just gives you back the time you cut. Another thing with editing is if you drag the top thing where it says fade, you can drag this over and it'll fade to black or whatever is below, whatever layers below it. So if you played this, it will fade to black like that. Or if I stuck this video in another layer, if I created a new layer right below it, like that, it would fade into that.
So what you're saying is we cut features.
Nope, didn't render. This brings up to my next thing. A lot of times when you're playing, it won't play the video properly, and that's because when you start editing, it has to, basically the computer has to figure out what the video is going to look like, and that takes computer processing power. And if you have a really high resolution project, it's not going to be able to render it out instantly in that high resolution project. So up here, you're going to want to select something like draft or preview and set that on auto so it does a better job. It's still going to be a little bit choppy and less resolution, but what it does is it allows for a smoother playback, so you get an idea of what it's going to look like.
What you're saying is
Alright, so that's how you do a fade. Oop, right there. See how it fades into the layer below, like that? Another way to do a transitional fade when editing, here. I'm just gonna undo all this, so it's back to how it was. Alright, is you can on Sony Vegas just drag it over, and you see how it has those same little line things like on the fade. And what this is it'll fade between the next video, so it's like a transition. So it fades.
So in short, this product will take little effort.
You can't really see that just because it's not working well when I record, but it fades in between the two things. And that's all the basic things when it comes to editing. It's just dragging things in place. Now onto audio. Audio is very similar to the video editing. if you want to record a line, you have to go down to a audio layer. So let's just select this one, and you can create this red thing, and it'll have this little bar if you have a microphone plugged in, and that tells you how much audio is going through the microphone, and you want it to stay green. If it's going yellow or red, you have your microphone up to, or you're too close to your microphone, or your microphone is up too loud. And so it's ready to start recording. And if you hit this record button right there, it will start recording whatever your microphone's recording, and you can hit stop, and you can hit done, and it's right there, and you can do editing stuff with it. Now with audio over here, you can adjust the volume of how loud the audio track's going to be, and that's just for this layer right here. You can do that on this one too, and it increases the decibels. Over here is the pan, which is for if you want it on the sound to be more on the left side than the right side. If you have something like headphones, you can notice that that's how they do things, where you have different beats, like one beat's on the left side and one's on the right side. That's how they do that. It's just dual channeled sound. So that's how you do the editing with that, and splitting still works the same with S, and I'll divide that up. And here's an important thing. You can actually adjust the sound. You can make it, if you need to make it quieter, you can actually just from here just click there and drag down, and it'll make that file right there, there's this thing, quieter. And you can fade in and out, which is useful for music. So like if you want it to fade out the end or fade in the song, that's how you do that. And that's how audio works. Alright, so the next thing is transitions. So I'm just going to clear out all this stuff and explain how transitions work. So over here you have your tab with transitions, and it has little animations. When you hover over your mouse, it goes from A to B, and that basically shows you what the transition's going to look like. So A is the first video you have on your timeline, and B is the second one, and it's going to show you how it transitions between one and the other. So I'm going to, once again, just drag in two things in media, and I want to snap it like that. And I want to have a transition from this one to the next one. So I can go to transitions. If I just wanted like a simple fade in or fade out, I can just drag it over, and depending on how long I want the fade to be, it would work like that would work. You could also just have a jump cut, which means it just goes to the next thing without any transition. Now you can go through, there's a lot of options in here of different transitions you want. I'm not a big fan of like the slot machine or all these fancy ones. I just like simple ones that like move in and out. So I like push. Push works really well. So maybe I just want to push left like that. So you click on it, you drag it right where there's that little line between the two videos. You just drag it down, and you got different options for each transition. You can just close this, and the transition should work. So if you want the transition to take longer, you have to drag this over, and that tells you how long the transition is going to take. And as you notice, instead of having that little X marks with the bars, it has a push transition, which means you use that transition there. And then the audio has no transition, so it's just being faded in and out. And so it has a little push between the next video, and that's how you do transitions. Now the last thing is rendering. So you can save this as, you can go over here and hit File, Save, and you want to do this. This saves all the editing you've done. So when you open up this file again, you have to save it, and it'll save as a .vag file, which is a Vegas file type, and basically it'll open up in this window again, the exact way you had it. But that does not mean your movie is done. For the movie to be done, you have to render it out. So you go to File, Render As, and then you, over here, you're going to want to select the file type you want it as. That's also kind of complicated. Standard ones are AVI, .mov, MPEG's a good one, so you can select MPEG, which is .mpg or MP4. I use Windows .mv, sorry. Windows, that's the Windows movie type. I use that one. And you're going to want to go into custom and then go to video and just set it to keep original size, and that will make sure that whatever resolution, aspect ratio, and frame rate you used in your project will be rendered out, and you give it a name and where you want to save it, and then you'd hit save, and it will take some time rendering because it's compressing all the things you edited into one video and one audio, and that takes a long time. So don't be worried if it takes hours, or if it's a short video, maybe less time than that. When you're rendering out, it shouldn't have these black bars right here. That means you're doing something wrong. It'll give you a preview of what it's rendering out, and in that case you're going to want to hit cancel and play back with your settings until it doesn't have that black bars and it renders out. And that's all for rendering, and that's all the basics in Sony Vegas. So I hope this helped. If you have questions, just post them below. If you have ideas for more tutorials you want, post them in the comment box below and tell me what you thought of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.